Hello, it's Miss Coletta here. Today I'd like to look at stem and leaf plots with you. Stem and leaf plots are one way that we can display a data set. When we make a stem and leaf plot, what we do is we want to split any number that we have in our data set into two parts, the stem and the leaf. The leaf is always the final digit of the number, and the stem is always the first part of the number. So if we have a two-digit number, like 57, this is easy for us. The stem is the first digit, the 5, and the leaf is the last digit, the 7. If we have a three-digit number, like our 100 over here, it's a little bit harder to do. We always want to make sure that the leaf is just the last digit of the number, so it would be the 0. And then the stem wouldn't just be one digit anymore, it would be 2. It would be 1, 0. Let me show you with the example. The very first thing we draw when we make our stem and leaf plot is a line down the middle to separate the stem and the leaf. Then what we want to do is we want to look at our data set and see if we can locate the smallest number, the minimum, and the largest number, the maximum. That will help us decide how big our stems need to be. When I look at this data set, I just scan across. Notice it's not in any order, so we have to be careful here. And I look for the smallest number. And it looks like it's 52. I check the rest of my data set, and yep, looks like that holds. Then my largest number, that's that 100 right there. So I know my lowest score is 52, and my highest score is 100. When I go to make my stem and leaf plot, remember that I have to split the number in half. So looking at that 52, the smallest stem would be a 5. So I go down to my stem and leaf plot, and on the left-hand side, I put the stem of a 5. Now we took a look at our data and we saw that the biggest thing we had to go up to was 100. So if this 5 represents 50, we'd have to go through the 60s, through the 70s, through the 80s, the 90s, and like we said, once we get to 100, a three-digit number, that stem might be 2 digits long, but that's fine. So we put a 10 there to represent the hundreds. Now what we want to do is we want to go through our data and see if we can write out in order all of the numbers in each of the appropriate rows. So when I'm looking at this stem of 5, I want all of the 50s to be represented in this row. So I look across my data, I have a 57, a 59, a 52, and that's it. Now, what we want to do is we want to write the leaves that would complete the number. So since I already have the 5 here, I only need the second digit of each number. We want to go from smallest to largest. So the smallest number in the 50s is the 52. So I write my 2 first. Now if it helps you to keep track, you could cross the number out as you use it. The next smallest is a 57. Now keep in mind that the 5 is already right here for us in the stem, so we only have to write the leaf, the 7. And I can cross my 57 out. And the last one in the 50s row is 59. Now when you read across your stem and leaf plot, you only need the stem once, and then each digit over here represents a new number. So we have 52, 57, and 59. That's why we always make sure our leaf is only one digit, so that we know every single thing over here represents a new data point. Now on to the 60s. I look across my data, and it turns out I don't have any numbers in the 60s. That's fine. Then what we do is we just leave this stem here, and the leaf side is empty because there are no numbers that actually fall in the 60s. It's very important to still show that 6 though, because we want to have all the numbers in order. That way we can see that there's a gap in the data, and that's something important about a data set. On to the 70s then. I look across my data, I have a 72, a 70, a 78, and a 71, and one more 78 here at the end. Remember, I want to go in order, so the smallest one in the 70s is just plain old 70. I'm going to cross it out so I don't lose track. Looking across again, the next smallest one is 71. And then I have a 72, and then 2 78ths. So since I have 2 78ths, I have to write the 8 twice. Because again, we read this for each number in the data set. So we would read it as 78, and then another 78 here. Each one represents, a different number in the data set. Now on to the 80s. Again, we're trying to go in order, so we look across, and I see an 88, an 85, an 87, an 80, 85, and 85. A lot of 80s. The smallest one is just my plain old 80. So, I'll cross out the 80, and then I'll go down to the stem and draw my 80. Now let's see how many 85s I have, because there were quite a few of those. I have 1, 2, 3 85s, which means that I write my stem 8 just once, and then my leaves I have to write 3 separate times. Notice that as I'm doing this, I try to generally line up my leaves with any other row so that you can kind of see which row has the most numbers by how far it goes across. If you scrunch your numbers too much in one row, then you won't really be able to see that as well. Then looking across, I still have this 87 over here, so I put my 7. I have an 88, so I put an 8, and I have an 89, so I put a 9. Now on to the 90s. Looking across, I don't have very many numbers left anymore, so this is getting a little easier for us. We have a 90, a 93, and a 95. And see how I'm kind of trying to find them in order if I can. And then I'll go up top and cross them out to make sure I got them all. Awesome. Now I only have one number left, the 100. So, down here, I already have my 10 stem, and I only need one more 0 to complete the number for 100. Now I'm just about done my stem and leaf plot. The only thing I need is a title and a key. So on the top here, I'm just going to put a title, and I already kind of labeled my data set, but I'll label my stem and leaf plot too. So I'm going to label it Test Scores. And I'm going to write a key. And a key just tells us how to read the stem and leaf plot, because depending on your data set, you could have something a little more complicated than just what we have. So for my key, I'm just going to use the very first number in my data set, 52. And what we do is we always write it like a little mini stem and leaf plot in the corner. So I write 5, and then the line, and then the 2. So it looks like just the beginning of my stem and leaf plot. And then I write equals 52. And that just tells somebody how to read my stem and leaf plot. The reason we do that is because, say we were using a data set with decimals or something like this, we could still make stem and leaf plots for it, but our key would have to explain how to read the number with a decimal place in it. So that's about it today for stem and leaf plots. I hope this helped you understand them a little bit better.